As soon as I hit this button. We're live here. We're live over here. Yeah. Hello, and welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Manaforge Omega. But before we do that, Buddy, I want to tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast.
On this podcast, we talk about games. And I guess the operative thing that has happened is we have defeated Dimensius, the final boss of the final raid of the War Within, and gotten
the Omega raid, you might even say.
Yeah, you might say, yeah. And gotten our ahead of the curve achievement, which is the achievement that you get for beating the heroic boss before the end of the season, kind of thing. Which is normally the little flag, the trigger that we stick in the ground that says, okay, we are gonna do this. You know, we're gonna sort of talk about the raid, which is pretty interesting because the War Within, I think, has been pretty up and down. I pretty much hated. I talked a lot of shit about Gallywix. I feel like in the second raid, but the first raid was pretty okay. So just real discerning opinions on what makes for a good raid in World of Warcraft in 2025.
Yeah. So, given I guess before we get into individual bosses, how did you feel about this raid overall?
I think it is one of the best raid tiers that they've put together in a while, mostly because of the back half of the raid is quite good. It reminds me of, it's funny because I don't know how much I would say Vault of the Incarnates was an excellent raid at the time, but now I look back on it and I say, wow, that was a really great raid, right? It was better than the other two raids in Dragonflight, definitely better than the first two raids of the War Within. And I would say that Manaforge Omega is probably right around there, in that tier, if not maybe a little bit below. I think I probably like Vault of the Incarnates more than I like Manaforge Omega, but it's definitely the best raid of the War Within, and it's definitely one of the best raids that they've done recently. So from that perspective, I would say excellent.
I think I can get on board with that framing. I don't know if I'd say it's great. To me, it feels like it's got a lot of solid bosses. I don't think it's got any really low lights, and then a couple that are really nice. But I don't think that I don't think that Dimensius is as good, or it felt as good to fight as Xal'atath, who is kind of
interesting. Yeah,
like that. Like there are fights that kind of like live rent free in my head. Some for bad reasons, right? Like like Sylvanas is one that's kind of like, I fucking hope I never have to do that.
Yeah, I feel like Sylvanas, there's a big flag that got planted where it was like, don't make fights like this ever again, kind of thing. And then there are fights that I think of as the opposite, which I would probably describe Xal'atath as one of them, where it's like, this is a great fight, try and find more ways to make a fight like this, which I think, in my mind, this is exactly what Dimensius does and kind of is. It is a fight that reminds me quite a lot of Xal'atath, and I don't know why I think it's good and cool.
Yeah. And there, what does it say? Like there are other, like, what was the like the other big fight in the Sylvanas raid? Why can I not put my
Xal'atath? I loved Xal'atath. Do you remember?
Not Xal'atath.
Fate Scribe we talk about all the time.
And
Fate Scribe
was Anduin that raid, or was it that a different raid?
It was the next raid.
Okay.
The raid afterwards. Yeah.
The Anduin fight lives, like, I really like that fight, right? Like that feels like a big fight, right? Like, it, like Fate Scribe was memorable because of the mechanics, but basically solely the mechanics. If you put a gun to my head and asked me what the fuck was the Fate Scribe and how did it matter to the story, I would not be able to tell you.
Oh my god, I can tell you exactly.
I know you could, answer, but like,
yeah, I am that kind of guy.
I'm like the normie, right? And like, I can tell you who Xal'atath is. I can tell you who Anduin kind of hit that level of kind of like good for the good for the plot and also a memorable fight. And I think Dimensius was was good but not great, right? Like I'd say maybe like B plus, right? Whereas like I'd put Razageth and Anduin on in like A plus and A level maybe.
Boy, that's a great framework. I really did love Anduin. Anduin was an excellent fight. Is maybe the best fight in modern WoW history. Can I think of something? Uh, N'Zoth is pretty great. I don't know. Yeah, I would have to go back quite far to find like a really, really good impactful fight. And at a certain point, I don't even think I was a mature enough raider to really rate like, the Emerald Nightmare or Nighthold, because that was just when we were kind of like getting back into the swing of things with like our raid crew and everything else like that. It makes me want to do a tier list. Actually, that should be like an episode. We'll build a custom tier list of just all of the bosses. It's probably since Legion. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we could do. I didn't really do all that much Warlords now that I think about it. We did the first tier of Warlords, I guess, but we didn't even get far. We did like the first 2.5 bosses, and then we crapped out. So yeah, but since Legion, I feel like is when we've been getting these AOTCs at a pretty regular clip, and I would have a good frame for being like, this was a good fight, this was a bad fight, this is a good raid, this is a bad raid, right? Like Dazar'alor, Castle Nathria, great raids, right? And then you have stuff like Eternal Palace and I don't even know what's another bad raid. Maybe Sanctum of Domination as just bottom, shit raids, that kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. Well,
anyway,
yeah. So we're both positive on it, but we don't think it's like stunning, brilliant, right? Like
it's also the funny thing is the timeline of these things is so long that it feels, I want to say it's the best raid in years, but we get 2 raids a year. So like, it's actually not that high praise.
Yeah, I would say like if, I would have to really think to remember how like things are ordered, just because I would have to really think to remember, what order Dragonflight and what Shadowlands was in, just because like, it kind of is in the mushy past and the plot through line is not so clear to me that it really matters, right? Like things felt like it built to Shadowlands, and then we've kind of been like moving through like an intercalary period. And now, the World Soul Saga, as a friend of the cast, Akshay, would emphatically say, has its own through line. But yeah. But let's get into the individual.
Let's
bosses.
get into it. Yeah.
All right.
I don't even remember the name of the first. This is actually, I think, honestly, one of the things that I find fun about the raid, which normally what it feels like happens is there's some raid that I really connect, or like some boss that I really connect with kind of in the middle of the raid that's like fun and interesting and engaging, and I kind of just dislike the rest of the raid. I would actually say Undermine was a pretty good example of that. I remember the bosses outside much better than the bosses inside of the Galagio, and I really didn't like Gallywix as kind of a thing. This is the opposite problem, which is that I kind of didn't care for most of the bosses that are leading up. I mean, we'll talk about them kind of in order and everything. But the final boss, like the final few bosses were a lot of fun. And so it is that feeling of like it actually ramps up into some awesome fights.
So boss number 1 is the Plexus Sentinel. I think this is the big boy. You slam on him for a while. He throws up a wall. This is like the marquee kind of mechanic. He throws up a wall, knocks you back. You have to run forward, use your mana or your phase bands to phase through the wall, and then you beat on him for a while more. There are some various and sundry like soaking mechanics that DPSS do, and like you have to run things out, but nothing super complicated. Lots of like don't stand in the bad, but mostly kind of like a just jam on the single boss kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would typically call this a good first boss. One of the things we've talked about in previous raid reviews is what you need in order to make a good versus bad first boss. And the best first boss ever was the Terragru. because it, you included these cool powers, you got to do crazy, stupid bullshit. Also, the Terragru had all of the buildup from Torghast, which was a lot of fun, right? The Terragru was the thing that killed you if your Torghast run ran, if you died too much and your Torghast run ran too long. So getting to kill it as a boss is really neat. That's kind of the high point of sort of first bosses. The first bosses that really suck are ones that are boring or muddled or sort of uninteresting. We've also talked about how I quite liked the first boss in Sarkareth's raid, whatever that was, the Neltharion raid, where you had like the lasers, but that boss was actually very hard for a first boss, which is really not that appropriate. I think one of the best first bosses is Shriekwing from Castle Nathria. It has a really straightforward, clear mechanic that ties into, the environment and the surrounding. Oh, it's a big bat. The bat is shrieking. You don't want to stand in the shriek, and if you do, you take a lot of damage and spawn these pools. And so you are line of sighting the shrieks with the pillars that are in the room that then get used later by Sledgefish. Like, all of that is beautiful. That's like a great first boss. And I would say that, Plexus Sentinel does an okay job at that with these walls, right? In the same sort of way. It's thematic, it's interesting, it's cool, right? And so, it sort of passes without blowing my mind.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with that evaluation. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything deeper to say about it. It was fun. It was fun to hit, right? Like it was inoffensive in the kind of like, warm yourself up, get into the raid, and like feel like you don't have to kill yourself over the early stuff.
It didn't require super intense coordination.
Yeah.
If one or two people fucked up the mechanic, it didn't wipe the raid. This was the problem with whatever I think. I can't remember the name of this fucking character.
It's called like Hellkite or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, the first one, that was the problem with that first one of Sarkareth. Like, if you had this coordination challenge of your lasers need to get sucked by the portals, and if somebody is not paying attention, they drop the portal or the laser in the wrong spot, the raid really suffers for that, and that sucks. That really blows. But Plexus Sentinel does not have that issue, so I guess kind of dodges this, core problem.
Yeah, it has like a run out the puddle of bad, but one, it's super obvious and hard to screw up, and two, even if somebody drops it in the middle of the raid, it's not the end of the world. It's not great, but it's
and I just those kinds of mechanics are I barely rate them anymore.
Yeah.
Like, they are there to put basic dance moves to the routine, so that you're not just sitting there hitting a target dummy kind of thing. But I don't care about any of them. I'm never happy to do them. They are just enough of a road bump that it makes the raid kind of like minorly enjoyable. So all of those mechanics are always a wash for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The only thing even mildly hard is on heroic. You have this like soak that you have to like switch the groups for, and that's like, that feels pretty old hat at this point, right? Like, just group 1 and group 2, and doesn't feel like a problem.
I will never care about any of those mechanics, I feel like, ever again. It is so not bare bones, but like basic
table stakes.
It just you can't get me to raise any contention whatsoever towards or for or against them.
Yeah, and I will say Plexus Sentinel feels like a base hit, not particularly exceptional. I mean, it's a good first boss in that, like, it's not too heartburny, but that's basically that. All right, you ready to move on to boss number 2?
Yeah. So next boss was Lumathar, which is the silk weaving, I guess, kind of moth thing. Basically, the story for Lumathar is that in Manaforge Omega, where they are creating the Gossamer wraps that keep the Rishi wraps that keep the ethereals bound together, all of those comes from silk from Lumathar, which I actually think is a really sweet sort of lore for a boss. And I was pretty happy with that. The core mechanics were really built around you were running out the silk into sort of the corner, and then there was the silk web that was coming in, and you had to sort of like break a piece of it open, which are these are sort of mechanics we've seen a number of different times. And then there is a halfway point where you start getting area denied, and you have a odds in evens out soak that is very straightforward. Lumathar is maybe the beginning of a number of bosses that I will probably end up saying I don't care for. In the sense that Lumathar, I think the lore for Lumathar is cool, and it does an okay job of piecing a couple of understandable raid mechanics together to sort of like get after this feeling. But generally, my feeling for Lumathar is that this boss is sort of taking a bunch of boring mechanics that I don't like and putting them together, and so I don't like the boss.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. The thing that stuck out to me about it is like it's got a lot of little places for optimization from like kind of like a log standpoint. It's like, oh, if I drop my transcendence transfer next to the boss when the run out mechanic, like when the everybody run out mechanic happens, I can get back faster. That kind of thing. That's fun to do individually. It also had this like mild legibility problem where like throughout, however long we've been doing this, I never quite figured out exactly what the rules about dropping the webs were. I just knew I had to go like next to the old one, and just like not step on the bad, I guess. Otherwise, it gets done for like forever and die. But like but like I never like internalized like what that actually meant. I was just like, all right, I'm webbed. Roll out, roll back in, and maybe that's just like being a monk lets me like move a bunch and not have to think about some of these things. But it was like it never. Like the legibility of that mechanic never kind of came through to me. Everything else was just kind of obvious, right? It's like don't stand in bed, kill like the barrier mechanic, which I don't think is a particularly evocative spider type mechanic.
Yep. This is we've seen this a million different times, and it is actually a mechanic that I love in the way that I think that it is a fun thing to do. And we'll talk about some of this because it shows up later in the raid. Like it is a fun thing to do that causes me to look at the fight differently, which is a big plus for a mechanic, right? It's not something that I just completely ignore in the way that some of these like soaks in and out. This fight has an odds evens soak, of which there are a number in the raid, and I find them kind of fucking annoying, to be honest with you. But those I think I just kind of whatever. The part of this boss that I actually do kind of like is a little bit of this race against time. There's the coordination effort where the tank has to clear the thing in order to, cool. I get that. I think that's kind of like neat enough. I just kind of think that it's worse than the sum of its parts, because it doesn't really I feel like you could give this fight to a really talented raid designer and they would find a really great way to loop in the silk and the weaving, with just completely different mechanics. This was I'm going to go into the old hat mechanics box. I'm going to pull a bunch of things out. I'm going to give them a coat of silkworm paint and call that a raid boss, which I kind of am never going to give that a good review, I feel like.
Yeah, so the thing that I found specifically most annoying about this fight was in the second phase, she like drops web under her and like you have to step her around, but like it felt like the hitbox on her was too close, and so it was like constantly kind of like getting a warning that like my toesies were like touching the edge of the web, and it was the most annoying thing in the world. Frankly, I wasn't paying enough attention, and sometimes I would die to it, but it was kind of like I'm not that close. It feels like this is like just a little too. It felt more annoying than it felt like important or whatever. Really?
Yeah, I do like this. I like when a boss goes into like Giga mode at 50% HP, and I think that's fun. That's interesting. I love basically anytime a boss is going to get killed by 6 people, because you get it down to 3% and just the ramping damage becomes too much, and it's can the tanks and like 2 or 3 DPS running defensive cooldowns like get the kill? That's always a great setup, and I'll always compliment that kind of design. But I think that Lumathar was the area denial that went with it. I truly hated, because of the cone being so annoying. Like if that cone maybe didn't have the soak part of it, right? And it's just like stay clear of the cone, stay clear of this stuff, this goop dropping all over the place. You just have to find good places to stand. I maybe would have liked this kind of more, but I agree with you 100%. I found it deeply annoying because not only was there a malice that I was looking to walk away from, I was also trying to track, like a tank and get in front of the boss in the right times, but not the wrong time. I hated all of that.
Yeah. So lore question for you. Now that Lumathar is dead, are there like no more Reshiram to be had? Or
I guess that's a good. I think so. I don't think that there are any more ethereals being bound. I mean, the next boss that we'll talk about is the Soulbinder, who is the person who is trapping ethereal souls and bring them back here. I mean, there are other Manaforges, so hypothetically speaking, I think that you could have good ethereals who are doing that work. Obviously, the good ethereal, spoiler alert, dies at the end, so I have no sense of, or I guess we can question whether or not he's good. It is. I don't know is the real answer. I guess kind of.
yeah. Well, I guess we'll find. It's not treated like an extinction level event when it happens, but you would assume something like, well, I guess there's no more ethereals ever, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, hold on. I bet I can like quickly answer this just on like the Warcraft wiki. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything that is unique about Lumathar in the sense that it's not like it couldn't be like you couldn't do this with anybody else. But it is just one of them, right?
Okay.
The thing reads, Lumathar was purposefully bred by the Shadow Guard for its unique ability to infuse arcane energy into its prodigious silk weaving, bound to his fate inside of the machinery of the Manaforge, or inside of the machinery of the Manaforge. Lumathar spins endless spools of arcane silk for its masters. So like there's nothing to say that you couldn't have more Lumathars in there, I guess, technically.
Yeah, I guess there's other, like you said, other mana. This is the Omega Manaforge. Theoretically, there's more of them. So, all right, next boss then.
Yeah.
Soulbinder Nazindri. I don't know. Soulbinder.
Yep. This was the ads fight
that
was extremely basic in my mind. There was like one mechanic, which is you had to break a canister with a ball in order to break the ads free, and you wanted to do this in a measured way because at a certain point she's going to break all of the canisters open, and if you haven't broken enough canisters by that point, it will do massive raid wide damage. What did you think of this one?
It's not really measured. You just like have to break the canisters at every opportunity you can, right? Like
yeah.
Like it's like I guess there's some pre-fight selection of like which ones you're targeting because the various ads do slightly different things. But like that felt like you solved that problem once. I found it like mostly annoying because like as melee DPS, you could theoretically wait for the ball to fire and step out of the way, but you were probably going to get hit by it, right, and miss the break. But like you said, it's very basic, just like murder the ad. I like murder the ads fights because I've got pretty good AoE DPS and I get to optimize around that. But like that's it felt like it was kind of like filler boss, right? Like
yeah, I would say it's a real contender for worst boss in the raid. We'll talk about some of that in a minute. The big thing that I think really sucks about this boss is that the core conceit never worked for me. I feel like this is the kind of boss that just gets ruined by Wowhead guides in the first place. We walked into it understanding kind of like the way that it was meant to work, but it actually the big raid AoE damage that was sort of promised by like fucking up enough of the balls never materialized. And I was healing for most of this. So frankly, I just found very little of this to be threatening, even when we did kind of make the mistake. So there wasn't the push-pull that I feel with other better bosses that are doing cooler, more interesting, sort of things along these kinds of lines. And without that, the fight had zero tensions and stakes, and it was deeply annoying because there was a lot of knocking back and knocking
Yeah.
around, and just coordinating the balls was kind of a huge pain. And she also didn't shoot the balls in a way that was I would call intuitive. So like the balls had this yo-yo effect where they would shoot out and then back in, but they didn't. I just kind of wish the balls just shot out in a line and they went through everything. Even like you didn't necessarily have to like set it up that way, but there were so many times that I aimed a ball correctly and the ball would like mwah, kiss the canister without breaking it and then retract, and I was like, what the fuck, I broke it, I did the mechanic, this is bullshit, right? Are you gonna tell me that because the boss wasn't close enough? It's like, ugh. Anyway, I really hated this boss. I thought it sucked. It did not suck because it was challenging. It was actually deeply easy, I would say. But it committed kind of the cardinal sin of being boring fundamentally.
Yeah, and there wasn't like a lot to. There wasn't a lot of like there was some skill expression in kind of the way those normally are, right? Like optimizing your DPS, but there wasn't like it's not like we with one of our other favorite bosses, the artificer, right, from was it Nathria, I think, right? Like he's like,
Yep.
here are moments where you're picking up the seed pods and like diving away with it, right? Like here it's just kind of like it's very binary. It's like stand in the right place and hope that the ball hits where it needs to hit, and that's basically it. There's no kind of like oh, can we like make a hard to do, like it's, if you set it up right, it's never hard to do, and it's just a matter of like, are you standing in the right place, and are you going to miss a couple of GCDs to guarantee that it hits, or are you going to like try and like pump your pump your deeps and like make the raid take more damage because you can't miss a GCD. Which I'm been that person. I'm not like throwing shit at anybody, but
yeah, yeah, deeply agree. Maybe the worst boss in the raid. It's this or the next one that I think are the real low points
Forge Weaver?
from yeah, Forge Weaver Arrest. Forge Weaver Arrest has lower lows but higher highs. I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute, obviously. The other big thing that I think Soulbinder really suffers from is just like a long running boss fight that doesn't have any contours to it. So Lumathar is better than this because Lumathar has this back phase that's interesting and does a thing that I like, which is the ramping damage, and now you're on a clock and this is where you lust. I love all of that, and I want to see that in bosses typically. But I don't know, the minute to minute of this fight is pretty much just phase 1, phase 2, phase 1, phase 2. You go back and forth. Very boring.
Yeah, I feel like maybe if the ads had a little bit more personality to them, there could be something to like do here. But I guess there was theoretically a difference with them, but they didn't feel that different.
The thing I was actually mostly reminded of is a boss that I think of as truly excellent, which is Broodmother, where you have a similar thing going on, which is that you have people in the raid who are breaking free ads, and then the ads are getting, like killed or whatever. There's this part where you're managing the ads, this part where you're managing whatever. Broodmother is a very different boss for a number of different sort of reasons, but Broodmother is functionally this boss, but great. And a number of things make that the case, one of which is it has this fight contouring, because Broodmother, once you crack all of the eggs, you just have to burn her down. And also you have a very specific A team, B team thing where the people who are cracking the eggs in Broodmother are different, or are not different, are specialized, right? I specialized in the role of, I'm going to memorize my egg cracking pattern, which requires a ton of extra stuff, and I'm all of that other kind of thing. Because Soulbinder does it randomly and the boss has to be sort of like right there, it just doesn't have any of the magic that a fight like Broodmother did, even though fundamentally they are both the exact same kind of thing, where you have a fight with somebody where the raids like controls how fast the different eggs are spawning. And hypothetically, you're supposed to, I don't know, manage that stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, I think part of it too is that like the ads and Broodmother all had like slightly different pieces, and it's like, oh, you got to interrupt this one, oh, you got to
Yep.
dodge this particular ability on this one, this one's stunnable, this one's not, right? Like those all felt like a thing, like a variety to have fun with. Here, it just kind of felt like I think there was theoretically some of that, but it just felt like and then they got murdered within 5 seconds, so it didn't matter what they were doing. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's move on to Forge Weaver then.
Yeah, Forge Weaver Raz. This one is also an ads fight, but a complicated ads fight because there's also this thing about there's an up phase and a down phase, where the up phase is he empowers these things, the I don't know, whatever they are,
Pylons.
like gates. Yeah, the pylons. And then the down phase is you just have to like focus the pylons and ignore him for a while. And then the final phase is like an execution phase. The final phase is great. I really loved the final phase. I think that was really like fun and interesting, but I fucking hated the rest of this fight with such a deep passion. It was kind of the most annoying, which is why it's sort of a toss-up in my mind between whether or not Soulbinder or Forge Weaver is my least favorite boss in the raid. Forge Weaver, the first 80% of this fight sucks hard, and I don't care for it. I find it all completely illegible. I could never track these fucking mechanics. I just had to look at all I could do was raid pings, right? I just had to look for the fucking raid pings because I could not parse. And I don't know why. Maybe this is just a skill issue. I'm willing to accept that if that's the answer, right? That there is just some key learning moment that I missed. Like maybe I missed a raid or something where we were progressing on this fight and I just couldn't, but I just could not put this fight together in my head. I think the balls are interesting, but completely moot. They never matter.
Yeah,
They always.
I think this is the big sin of this fight is that you've got this interesting thing where like individual people will spawn balls and they are drifting towards one of these pylons. And so I think, and the idea is you want them to be like a little bit further away. That way you have time and effort that you can, go and kill those balls before they get to the pylons. But it's never a problem, right? Like you just kind of like ambiently kill them and you don't worry about them. The other big mechanic is every once in a while, he spawns a clone, and then the tanks have to move the real one away from the clone. You have to kill the clone. But that really, from the DPS perspective, it really doesn't matter because, like, you just wait for the tank to move it away, and then you murder the clone. And then if you're really optimizing, you run over to the boss, you get like 2 more GCDs in before he goes back to the middle. But that one doesn't bother me so much because it's a tank mechanic, right? And that.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you about the balls. I think the balls are like the core sort of failure here. There's like a bunch of stuff that's also happening at the exact same time, at least on like the healer end. There's like a dispel, and there are more orbs that are going out, but like orbs that are dealing damage to the raid. So you have orbs that are spawning as that need to be killed, then orbs that are spawning on the ground that people need to dodge, and they never did, but they didn't even do enough damage for it to matter. Like I just never even. I understood that I was supposed to tell people to get out, and I understood when I had the mechanic, my DBM told me, run out of the raid, get dispelled, and then run back in. But people just didn't run out of the raid, and so I just started dispelling them in the raid, and the orbs that were in the raid didn't kill anybody, so I just kind of healed through it all, and I was just like, what? This all sucks. This is so lame. I don't care kind of thing. And then there's the pylons thing. The pylons were also inscrutable to me. I understand that one pylon is active and maybe it had a mana bar or something like that people were paying attention to. Great, wonderful. I just waited for the ping for someone to tell me what pylon to hit, and I just hit it. I just hit it very hard. There were things to sort of dodge and move around that I took a lot of damage from because I kind of felt like those were, I don't know, just that whole second phase. Anyway, I hated all of this and I found it deeply annoying. But then it had a very fun execute phase, which was at 20%, he goes to the front of the room and then starts a slow mounting wind that pushes you back like harder and harder. This in my mind.
Oh, one of us lost internet. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that Buddy has dropped, so we will vamp a little while until he gets back. You. So, is anybody watching at home that has thoughts about the raid? I guess not. Anyway, I will say my piece about this, which is that I think that the pylons phase was fine. Like it plays the animation that you run to. I think the big sin here is that the first one has the animation, the one you have to kill first, but then it doesn't matter which one you kill the next two in, and basically you have to coordinate that, and you really don't. Like, you can just kind of go to whatever, but then you have to have healers going to both sides, and I think that's the big problem, is that like it is like an annoying step of like a barely coordination to make it work. And so the way we chose to handle it is just send everybody to one other pylon and then to a third. And if you went to the wrong pylon, like I'd say like 50% of the time it didn't matter. It's just a matter of whether or not there was a healer that you were in range of that could heal you through the issue. But, you know, that's the way it goes. This execute phase, though, the other piece of this that Buddy hadn't brought up yet before he crashed out was, oh, apparently Buddy can hear me. Hold on a second. Let me see if maybe it's a Discord problem. Hold on, I'm going to try and rejoin. Dude, we are still live.
Are you with me?
I am. Give me 1 second because we're still live.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't really know what happened there, but I actually have been having network issues kind of all day.
Okay.
Well, but I definitely I heard that whole thing. I was like, wait, I'm talking. I'm just kidding. Anyway.
Yeah. No, you froze kind of entirely on the screen, but it appears to have been a Discord issue. Dropping and rejoining seems to have fixed it. So you were talking about the execute phase. Apparently, Buddy could hear everything I was saying. So,
yeah. So you were explaining in the execute phase, it had that pushback mechanic, and I think I thought all of this was great. It was a lot of fun to deal with this. There were a lot of optimizations that you could make, which I don't normally care about all that much, because I don't know, I'm just not like log pushing all that hard these days. But I cared about it for this one because there were just like neat, cool things. I did this fight on Kruva, I did this fight on Gorash, and both Shaman and Mage have neat abilities to allow themselves to cast while sort of moving or like reset their positions. So I could alter time and then cast, and right as I'm about to get pushed off the edge, I alter time right back next to the boss. Or I was doing a lot of things where it's like I cast the Frostbolt and then I follow up with Ice Lances, but the Ice Lances I can move, so I can walk forward. For like I loved all of that. I thought that stuff was fun. So my thing about Soulbinder was just always secking. It was, it is a kid who never does homework and gets all C minuses on the tests, right? Forge Weaver is like the kid who doesn't show up to class for the first 3 tests and then shows up and aces the final. And they both kind of average out to have pretty bad grades, but at least Araz had that final piece that I thought was fun.
Yeah, the one thing I did want to highlight about that final piece is that the balls finally mattered because he spawns with these balls and they're marching towards the back. And so you'd actually have to put some effort into stunning them or, bouncing them or something. And I thought that was the thing I wanted a little bit more of in like the main body of the fight, to make it feel like it was better. I do think I like Soulbinder less than Forge Weaver. I think that Soulbinder is going to be my worst boss of the raid, just because Forge Weaver, I did not have all the same issues that you did. At least had some texture to it. So there's
I would probably agree with that. I mean, like if I'm thinking about movies or whatever, I always say that the worst movies are the boring, forgettable ones, and Soulbinder is the boring, forgettable boss here. So I probably would also agree that Soulbinder is the worst one in the raid. But then we can actually get to a cool boss. This is, in my mind, the start of the cool bosses, right? The next boss are the Soul Hunters. So it is a council fight of 3 demon hunters, all in 3 different specs. The demon hunters are using different abilities that we would associate with their like with their spec, even stuff that we would later learn is part of the upcoming midnight, collapsing star, void devourer, demon hunter spec, whatever that stuff is called. And I am always a sucker for these. I will always eat well whenever somebody puts a boss fight that is, hey, the boss is a character class, so just make the boss fight a character class. All of these fights in my mind are fucking bangers. Kel'Thuzad, banger. The shaman boss from Vault of the Incarnate, fucking banger, right? The I don't know. I can't think of any more of these, but I just love
Yeah.
those 2 at least. And so they do this thing. Gul'dan would be another good one. Gul'dan is like the quintessential warlock, right? I just love it when they say we are going to make a boss fight out of a character class, and you just watch that character class do a bunch of cool things that is like boss fight worthy.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100% on board. I thought the mechanics were actually fun to deal with. Right, a lot of mobility, a lot of jumping around. I like the 3 different intermissions are like each character like doing a solo thing, right? And that the enrage timer is just like everybody does their solo thing at the same time. Did this one have like if you killed one too early, then the other 2 would like freak out on you, or would it?
Yeah, you had to bring them down pretty evenly. I also thought that all of the mechanics had good tension. This was a boss that we were stuck on for a bit because we were not beating the timer very efficiently, and it's like that kind of stuff is fun. I loved optimizing. It's funny. Council fights are good for this in general, but Frost has a pretty unique kind of cleave focus profile. And so doing Frost in this raid was just a ton of fun. Or in this fight was a ton of fun because the bosses are hopping around, which means that I was getting a lot of damage. Like it was like an optimization thing. If I could focus the right boss, I could cleave onto like I was always looking for 2 people together so that I could get the cleaves, because your glacial spike cleaves, your ice lances cleave when you're in frost. That stuff is a lot of fun. I also loved that the bosses had different health pools. How cool. This is something that was in the Emerald Dream Raid, whatever that was called. The council fight there, the bosses had different health pools, and so they actually kind of came down at unequal sort of rates, and there were a lot of times where we had to call more DPS on this person, more DPS on that person, and I just love that. I think that that's like a really fun way to sort of like manage things. So I was a big fan of the Soul Hunters, a real strong showing.
I agree. Similarly, Monk also, especially in Celestial, hero talent has this kind of like cleaving stuff that you have to like that you have to optimize around, which I had a ton of fun with. Yeah. Standout annoying mechanics was, I guess, like the line mechanic. Basically, one person gets hit with a thing and they have to like walk out, and then there's like a group soak, but if you're too close to each other, you'll ping each other. And that one was like 7 types of annoying, but I think in like a good way, right? Like, like you gotta learn how to do the mechanic. You gotta learn how to like, soak it and not soak it too close to each other. And then also you need to learn that if you're the target, you gotta stretch it out so that people can stand in it. Otherwise, you're gonna die. And it's not like it was like a super huge. It's not like if you totally screwed that one up, it wiped the raid. It kind of like killed a couple people, which was not ideal, obviously, but like also not kind of like darn it, somebody screwed this up again and we just got to restart. It's just kind of like, well, we're down a man, right? And we could see if we can recover. But to your point, right, like we weren't clearing fast enough initially, and that was an issue. I think you froze again. We're gonna try restarting again. Hold on. Oh, I think I might have lost internet. Well, I have indeed lost internet. Oh, you can hear me? Huh. Interesting. Well, let's see if Discord wants to cooperate. We're trying to come back, boys. Yeah, there's no video because I disconnected from Discord. Hold on. All right, we're back again. Maybe. Video's up for me. Josh, can you still hear us? Or hear me at least? Who knows? Buddy, you there? All right. Hold on while we wait for Buddy to load in. This is going to be painful, I guess. I think I did lose internet for a second, which probably means it's on my end at least, but we'll see. We have Buddy on the screen, but we cannot hear or see him. I mean, I'm far away from you. That's fair. No, I think the thing that caused this issue is me losing internet, because I definitely had a blip for a second. So that's not on that might be my internet then. Buddy can't connect. Fantastic. All right. Oh, he's connected. I cannot hear him. All right. Can we audible into a different chat program? Assuming the internet's still working. Yeah, okay, so all right. So we are going to try and figure something out real quick. What can I do? All right. We're going to try this. See if this works. Not this one. Fuck. Hold on. All right, so we're here. I just gotta see if I can live make this screen work.
I think I'm back.
Oh, are you in Discord?
Yeah, in Discord.
All right, we're still live.
Oh, did you want to move to a fucking Mumble?
No. It's Google Meet, but this will be easier. That way, I don't have to set up a new screen. So I'm gonna close the Google Meet. There we go. I'm back. Buddy's back. Everybody's back. We're here. Back. All right. Thank you for believing in us, Josh. All right. So what were we talking about?
So yeah, we were talking about the Soul Hunters.
Yeah. The line mechanic.
The line mechanic. The blaze lines, right?
Yeah.
Were fucking annoying on this boss. I always think they introduce a new mechanic in these. Every raid has some new mechanic that you're like, oh, I'm going to refer to this forever as it's like blank from blank, right? Blaze lines were that for Farak, and basically every time they've shown up, I have been annoyed by them since. So they showed up on Kaiveza, they were kind of annoying, and they showed up here and they were kind of annoying. So not a huge fan of blaze lines, but
the blaze lines weren't the mechanic that I thought was annoying here. It was the stretch line. The rush, like the I think it was
the dash.
Yeah.
Okay, that was annoying. Okay.
Well, so I thought it was acceptably annoying, but it was like one that required a lot of like coordination, right?
Okay,
like,
yeah, sure. I think I would probably agree with that. Yeah,
I honestly felt like the blaze lines were less annoying here because they just didn't feel as strong as like Farak's blaze lines were like you're fucked, right? Like if you got hit by
Yeah,
them
for
here.
X it was about like you can't hit the ghosties or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
which is fine. These ones just chunked people, which I probably felt more because I was like a healer.
yeah. Fair.
And but it was also in like the crazy phase, and I don't know, maybe I'm overstating it, but yeah.
Yeah, the thing that was annoying here is that you had a reason to be close to each other, which was the melee people had to
Yes.
like hit the boss, and so like dealing with that was a pain in the butt.
And they were not true blaze lines. It was like a line where there was a fixed point that you were pivoting
Mm,
around, which was also a little bit of a different kind of like contour to the whole thing. So,
yeah,
but anyway, I really like this fight. Not it's not my favorite fight. It's not a slam dunk home run, knock it out of the park kind of thing. But in terms of strong base hits, cool fights where they, kind of bring things together and pop them back up. I really enjoyed Soul Hunters.
yeah. Up next is Fractilis, which
Fractilius, yeah,
uh,
or Fractalist. I don't know if
yeah.
there's another I in there.
There's no second eye, so it is.
There's no second I, so it's just Fractalist. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, on the British surface, it's Fractilius, which is
Yeah.
yeah. So this is just like a tank and spank with some wall mechanics, right? Like you have to like aim walls down a lane, and every once in a while there's a knockback that'll break the walls. Very tank and spank, very fun. I think this is like perfectly positioned to be like a good kind of like a kind of like an amuse bouche, right? Like kind of like we've done a bunch of stuff now just fucking murder the big man, right? Like and you don't have to think too hard about it. It's it has like you can screw it up, but it's like not terribly hard to do, and it's I think a good kind of like palate cleanser. That's the word I'm looking for.
I think I agree with you. I love these boss fights because they are so Sludge Fist is a number of them. This is where like a big gear check, where the boss fight itself is not that tough, but it has a really aggressive timer. So you just kind of have to be like pumping by this point, or else you're just not going to see the rest of the raid. So we've seen a number of these kinds of bosses. And Fractalus has a great mechanic for it. I really loved this thing of adding walls, breaking walls. It was kind of the perfect fight for understanding something on a strategic level and being able to execute to a level of excellence, which as opposed to Eraz, which I couldn't get my head around those mechanics. These ones I immediately got it. I was like, oh, so sometimes I'm going to put a wall down. Sometimes I'm going to break a wall down. We can't let the walls get to 6, right? So all of a sudden, just that simple, elegant, kind of setup unlocked the whole rest of the fight for me. And I think that there were a number of us. It was me. It was Josh. Like Sarian. It was like a couple of us were reading the fight on that level and giving kind of proclamations. Lou would be another one. She was the one who was telling us, where we ought to like put our columns and stuff like that. It was her strategy that really got us, kind of like got us the kill. But I also loved that it was a brain off fight if you kind of wanted it to be, in the sense that really, like if you just sort of want to sit there and do the tank and spank kind of thing, it's pretty easy to, kind of intuit where you ought to go and the orders that you should be sort of following, in order to make for a good fight. So I really loved Fractalus. Fractalus is not my favorite fight in the raid, but it's maybe number 2. It's a great fight. This was beautiful.
Yeah, no, I agree. Although it is one of those fights where like if someone's not paying attention, they just send a wall through the entire raid, and that's
Yeah. The funny part about that is I thought I was going to be annoyed, but it was actually kind of perfect as a healer. I sort of like those moments, and I think that they are important because as a healer, I like to flex from a point of um pain in a
Mm.
way, right? Like when everybody's doing all the mechanics correctly as a healer, it's actually sort of boring to be a healer. When somebody really fucks up and you have a chance to save the raid,
Mm.
that's when being a healer feels the best. And so in a certain sense, I actually think that's a good mechanic. There are other mechanics that will sometimes have, somebody fuck up and just the whole raid gets wiped and it's just like, oh, god damn it.
But here you had the opportunity to recover, and you got
Yeah,
to
but
feel
here
like
you
a
have
big
the
deal.
opportunity to rally, drop a cooldown, go, oh, I am going to blast, boom, 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 tons of heals in order to keep everybody topped off. All of that is like, that's great fun.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. All right, so we're positive on Fractalus. I guess that's not much else to say about it. Simple boss, simple time, simple kills.
I think this wall stuff is going to be like in my mind, this is sort of the new mechanic that they introduced here that they're going to carry forward into the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then we get to the final two. I do think so. The next one is Nexus King, Saladar, which I think has big kind of like boss before the boss energy, right? Like he feels like a big set piece boss. He's a lot of fun. I'm very positive on him. The final mechanic is a pain in the butt and maybe just slightly too complex for like people to get consistently, and I don't know if that's an us problem or just kind of like it's the mechanics too hard. So just to lay it out, first phase is stand in two groups, do a bunch of like alternating soak mechanics. It's not too difficult. Pull the lines out of the group. I could not figure out like if the dragons coming through were actually connected to those slash lines or not. It seemed like they were, but then sometimes it felt like you just like got a line to the middle of the raid for no reason. Um, then second phase is ads, right? Like there's like a small intercalary phase where you have to like dodge a bunch of beams. Again, I could not figure out how the placement of things affected the beams coming out of the dragon's mouth. And it seemed to always kind of work out. Then it was kill a bunch of time to add kill, which was maybe our biggest sticking point initially. No, that's not. It's one that required the most fine tuning because if we were off, then we were off, and we didn't. We couldn't get past that point. And then you got to kill the mount, and then you got to kill the king. And the final phase has this mechanic where you have to basically spread out 6 people in such a way that they're balanced because there's a gravity effect, and the number of times that we screwed up that. Oh, and then the other half of this is that after DPSing, you get balls aimed at you, like with Soulbinder, and you have to shoot the balls. The balls are moving, and also something that I discovered a fair amount too often was that if you run near the balls so that you can aim, or if you run near the spiked balls so you can aim your killing balls, you will outrange the healers and you will die. That's not fun.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you that I think that particular mechanic was too punishing, and it brings a great boss fight to kind of pretty good in my mind. This is typically my favorite boss in the raid. I feel like if I were to chart it over time, almost always my favorite boss in the raid is going to be the second to last boss. It's just going to have the most interesting stuff going on, or stuff to do, or sort of whatever. So like Kel'Thuzad was my favorite boss in Sanctum, second to last boss in the raid. Neltharion in the second raid, whatever that was called, that was the second to last boss in the raid. Ton of fun. Even in War Within, what do we get? What was the second to last boss before? Oh, Muggsy. Muggsy is okay. Muggsy, I don't know. I didn't really like any of them in Undermine. But typically, the second to last boss in the raid is the one that has kind of the most complicated thing going on. Before you get into sort of like true final boss fight kind of energy. And I typically respond better to that than the actual kind of final boss. Broodkeeper actually was the second to last boss in Vault of the Incarnates, which would be another sort of good example for this this thing in motion. Saldahar is really let down by just I think there are two problems. One, I think there's just not enough time to appropriately shoot the balls. And two, the nature of because the shooting the balls is not essentially hit scan, to use kind
Yeah.
of shooter terminology. That also really annoyed me. There were times where I'm like, I can't fucking believe I missed it. And it's because, there's just a little bit of sort of a shot to
You
the
gotta
the
lead
thing
the
that goes
shot.
out. Yeah, and you just miss it by like a fucking inch, and you're just like, man, are you fucking kidding me? I did
Yeah.
not deserve to whiff on that kind of thing. So, that's generally sort of how I felt about Xal'atath. But I like basically everything else. I like going up to the separate platforms. I'm kind of always a sucker for a good ads intermission. Every ads intermission that we've had in um War Within has honestly been pretty fun. Even like Gallywix had a pretty fun kind of like ads intermission where you have to like go and kill a bunch of ads and do stuff. I'm always going to be on board for that kind of thing. But the thing right at the end just kind of felt,
Yeah, that was part of it.
cheap.
This is like this is almost like the Sylvanas Phase 2 problem, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's a lot of effort. It's not we could get there pretty regularly, but it took a while to get there, and then it was kind of like do or die in a moment, and then if you died, then it's kind of like, well, gotta roll the rock back up the mountain again, right? Like to even try again, and you can't iterate fast enough for it to feel like you're practicing the meaningful thing.
Yeah, and it also felt like the Fate Scribe problem also, which is like the way that we solved Fate Scribe was by pulling the lever at the slot machine and just hoping that the random people assigned to shoot the balls were good people, right? Um and I kind of think that's part of why, a couple of weeks ago we had a night where we were just like wiping to Saldahar over and over again. And there are a number of reasons why we were doing that, that included a number of things that were like, we just got our AOTC, and so a bunch of people didn't come to raid the next week because we had achieved the goal kind of thing. But like one of the things that absolutely fucked us in there is giving, there were just people who were getting the shot that weren't able to shoot the balls kind of correctly, and that sucks, but it's the way of the world.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You got to do the raid mechanics in order to beat the raid. And it's asked of everybody, and not everybody can rise to the challenge, which is not always a problem, but
The one thing I will say that I really loved about Saldahar, and that, like I said, it is a pretty good, fight. It's actually a great fight that is brought down to pretty good by kind of this one crucial mistake. But one piece that I really loved about it was the DPS differential between him and his dragon, which was awesome. I loved that. The idea that you can pump damage into the dragon so that he sucks health out of the dragon, and it makes the fight a cleave fight for like a portion of the fight. Like all of that stuff I think is super fun and interesting, and it's just a great way to model boss health, and help teams that are performing well go even
yeah,
further, basically.
go beyond, go plus ultra.
Yeah. Like doing the thing where we DPS it all the way down is so satisfying. There's just like there are so few things in these raids that are as satisfying as just like absolutely fucking crushing the health on
Yeah,
like that thing. Yeah.
I agree. All right, well, that's Nexus King, and finally we got Lord Dimmy himself.
The big Dimmadome.
Yeah, Dimensius. So this is a 3-phase fight. First phase is first you start off of the platform, which is interesting, right? You have to like go through a portal, get on the platform. What are the mechanics here? You have to individual players have to pick up masses of gravity and use that to create zones that protect you from a boss effect. And then you also have to use those to individuals get thrown up into the air. You have to use that to pull people down. And then there's also puddles of bad that you have to dodge around, and that will land at your feet. And so you have to drop them in the right place. And there's also a soak. And then you got to kill the boss while this is happening, right? I think I hit all the mechanics.
And there's a couple of ads. You have to kill the ads.
Oh yeah, you have to kill the ads to generate the mass
in order to get the gravity or whatever. And that's just phase 1. Yeah, phase 2 is a skywriting phase, so not unlike what the fuck is the name of that fucking guy?
The druid.
Tindrol from Farak and the Emerald Dream, that where you are flying through this gigantic void. Dimensius is truly gargantuan and is trying to shoot you with a big space laser. You have to dodge that. And then you get to a platform where you have to kill 2 void, sort of like void ads. And there's this thing about other ads are spawning. And you have to kill them in kind of the correct formation, which I really loved. And also spawn some other, sort of stuff out. You do that twice. And then the final portion is you fight Dimensius in a very small kind of heart, which reminded me actually of N'Zoth. Where Dimensius is being orbited by mass, and he's causing that mass to go supernova and turn into black holes. And so as you are using the mass to dodge damage, you are consuming it and DPSing him down at the same time. I obviously really love Dimensius. I think Dimensius is the best fight in the raid, and it has been kind of a while since I feel like I want to really crown the final boss in a raid as its best fight. But I love this fight. It had kind of everything going in its favor. There were a number of things that were really great. One of the things I said when we were talking about Raszageth is the trick to Raszageth, and the thing that made that fight really good and fun, is that the final phase seems the hardest, but is actually the easiest, right? So it is where the stakes are really high and it's hard to get there. And when you get there, it's like, bum, bum, bum. Oh my God, everything's happening all at once. With Dimensius, you have these rings. If you overlap the rings, you're gonna fucking die. You have to dodge the thing. There's a pull. If he pulls you into Dimensius, you get like force choked to death. If you get pulled into any of these black holes, you get force choked to death. And when I lay all of that out, it really sounds hard, but actually it's the easiest part of the raid, where you just kind of sit and kill Dimensius in practical sort of terms. The hardest part of the raid is the middle portion, where you're doing, like doing stuff with the ads. And the most mechanically demanding, I would say, part of the raid is the first part of the raid, where it's just really intense coordination of, you can't get hit by any of this kind of stuff. You have to be dropping your things, because if somebody drops it in an inappropriate spot, basically any death in the first phase was kind of a wipe for us, which I just think leads on to... So anyway, you have this fight that is structured like hard mechanically, hard performatively, right? Like in terms of raw performance, you need to do damage in order to win, and then easy, but it seems really hard. And that's just the perfect recipe for a final boss in my mind.
Yeah, I like the third part isn't hard. The hard part is getting to the third part with enough people to like get the boss down in a reasonable amount of time. Which I think is a good way to do it. And like obviously you have to be paying attention. You have to like do the mechanics. You have to like hit your ring such that you don't get hit twice by like, before the buff falls off, that kind of thing. But it's not that bad. It's just kind of like it always felt like, like racing to the finish line, essentially. Instead of like, being particularly mechanical. It's like, can we get this done with like, a less than perfect kind of composition, raid composition while we're there, and it always seemed to work out, which was or rather, once you're there, it only took a couple of repetitions to get it done, which feels nice. Right, this is the opposite problem of salad, or this is the opposite situation of Salad Bar, where it's like once you're past that opening part, you can be pretty sure that like you're close, and it feels like you make progress, and you like it feels like getting over the finish line isn't tough, which is I think ideal. I feel like Raszageth was like this too, right? Like, yeah, the platform was shrinking, but it didn't feel like the actual mechanical parts of Raszageth were the end of the world, right? Like, it was just a matter of like having enough people to knock it out, which is why we feel so favorably about that one. Yeah.
It's funny because I think maybe I would even say Dimensius is better than Razagath. I don't know. I would have to work really hard to try and parse my feelings about Razagath, and because like part of what I loved about Razagath is that it had deeply dragon vibes. And there were just like some neat things that were going on in that fight that are cool and different than what was going on with Dimensius. And it's just like I don't really know how. At a certain point, I just kind of want to put them both in S tier and not really compare them past that kind of thing. But it is kind of the first time I feel like in a long time that I've thought of the final boss of an expansion to be really, really good and solid. Maybe BFA would have been my last one. I didn't like Argus very much in Legion. And then obviously you had the Jailer, which was a fun fight, but Anduin was much better. And you had Farak, which was also a pretty good fight. I don't know. I don't really like the Emerald Dream Raid all that much in the first place, to be honest with you. So it's just like, man, I just connected to Dimensius. I felt like we got to sink our teeth into that fight. I learned so many tiny little optimizations, both as healing and as DPS, that allowed us to really progress. And all of that stuff, convalesced in such a way that this fight was kind of better and different and more powerful than sort of all of the others. I honestly, the thing that I find most sort of depressed by when it comes to Dimensius is actually the story aspect, because Dimensius isn't really a character, and his defeat feels, it's immediately sort of undercut by kind of the nature of where the cutscene goes afterwards, and Illyria and all of that other kind of stuff. And like, that's fine, that's fair enough. They're allowed to set up midnight, and we knew we weren't going to get Xal'atath and all of the rest of the kind of thing. But like, it is sort of a bummer that the final boss of the raid is also a gigantic big fuck you to set the stakes for the next expansion.
Yeah. What are you gonna do, right? Like,
Yeah.
that was I honestly had mixed feelings about like the World Soul Saga as kind of like a construction, just because like, so, well, with the next there's gonna be 3 more expansions, right? Like, that like you're not gonna get a satisfying end at the end of War Within, because you can't, right? Like, you have to set things up. Yeah.
Yeah, in a certain sense, I actually kind of like that. So on one hand, I love the trope of teaming up with Lex Luthor, which I've talked about in a couple of places about this patch, right? That the final patch of the War Within is about Koresh, and it's about learning, what's going on with the Void and Dimensius, and Xal'atath, and that you need to team up with Xal'atath in order to defeat the bigger bad. Great. I love this. I love it. We have never done it kind of properly in World of Warcraft, and so I'm so glad that we're finally here at this kind of point. My big issue is that we're just kind of focusing on characters who I don't really care about. I don't actually care that much about Illyria. I think she's kind of it's funny to me that everybody was so mad about sort of Shadowlands and stuff like that, because I think of Sylvanas as like 100 times better character than Illyria. And that is where that's just always going to be a recipe that Dimensius as the final boss of the raid is not going to have just the most satisfying conclusion, right? There's just like no way that you can kind of do that sort of thing. And that's fair enough. It just is what it is, I guess. And so it sucks, but it's a favorable downside, because at least I got a really sweet boss fight out of it.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Were there any pieces of loot that you were particularly into in this raid? That's one thing that we didn't really like get into, I guess.
Yeah. I actually kind of no, and I think I've got like a kind of bigger point, or a bigger question for you about this.
Sure.
Between the vault and everything else, it felt like loot was less individually important. It also felt like it was easier to get into top shape, which in some levels is good, but like it felt like we breezed through normal super easily, right? Like, it wasn't an issue at all. And I don't think I think some of that is that as a raid group we're a little bit more coherent, but I think a lot of it is that the dedicated people, like historically, I have come around for raid and done world content, and between delves and the vault, I can get like I got to the max gear level that I was ever going to get, just because I don't do any mythic tier stuff. Like 2 weeks before we got the kill, and then like I don't have anything else to do, right? I don't have any chase, right? Like that's because like I'm not going to like learn how to do high level mythic pluses just to like get a higher tier raid loot for raid. Do we think this is good or not? I think it's mostly good, but there are some things that feel kind of like I feel like something's lost, but not something that's so lost that I want to trade it out. Does that make sense?
I guess it does. This was an interesting AOTC for us because it wasn't carried on the top end by kind of like me and Dave and Low Kicks doing insanely high keys all the time. So typically what happens is, just this quarter of our raid, like core, is gonna get basically maxed out in terms of eye level. That really didn't happen this season for completely unrelated circumstances, right? Just the healer for our Mythic Plus crew, her CPU on her laptop was fucking dying and she wasn't able to do that content anymore. So we just didn't really run too many keys outside of, we like ran a little bit of keys in the first couple of weeks, and we, kind of a little bit hedged with me healing, but we didn't do a ton of that. So this is actually kind of the first raid in a while where it feels like it was the effort of the raid that got us there, right? Like most of my gear on Gorash, I had a little bit of this Mythic Plus gear, but most of my gear on Gorash was just coming from these, pieces. I did a little bit of delve farming, but not a ton. I definitely do get that feeling though. One of the things that I think is tough for World of Warcraft is you have this thing where you want people who do the raids to be able to gear up for the raids and execute on them without having to touch other content, right? So, for instance, somebody like Sarian wants to just sit and do I mean, Saren's maybe a bad example because I guess he does delves. A lot of us ended up doing delves. But typically, you have kind of these people who are doing only the raid. They show up, they do the raid, and they do nothing else, right? And you want those people to be able to gear up into a place where they can get AOTC, but at the same time, you have parallel loot trajectories that were for a while coming from PvP and Mythic Plus. We didn't really have any PvPers, but we did have Mythic Plus people, right? And now you have a fourth track for that, which is delves. So you can get gilded crests out of delves, right? And I don't think that the game is structured right now to account for the ways in which people can maximize the multiple loot streams all going into sort of one character. If I were optimizing, which again I wasn't, but if I had optimized in season 3, I would have been doing my delves every week to get a bunch of gilded crests. Then I would be doing a bunch of Mythic Plus to get gilded crests. Then I would have been doing the raid to get all of the Valor stones, because actually most of my Valor stones typically come from raid. You tend to get Valor capped on, like looking for the other two kind of thing. And at that point, you get to this position where the only thing that matters for the raid is the achievement, right? Which I think is kind of an unsatisfying thing. I just sort of always want the raid to be giving like applicable loot for me and what I want to do. So yeah, I don't know. It's a complicated problem. They don't have a good solve for it, and I think all of the solutions are kind of worse than the problem. Like if you were to tell me that you can only get a certain number of these, like you could do something like you can only get gear from Mythic Plus, or like you do something PvP. You'd say, okay, Mythic Plus gear scales up by 15 eye levels when you walk into a Mythic Plus dungeon, right? So it is specifically gear for Mythic Plus. That's an awful answer. I think it's a terrible answer. Pulling gildeds out of delves, I think, is also a terrible answer.
Yeah.
I think it's fair for delve kind of only players to be able to get Mythic. So I don't know. I don't think there's a good answer for basically any of that. And
Yeah,
that's just kind of the
limiter is you can't actually get mythic gear out of delves, right? Like you can.
Yeah, that's fair.
You can get the gilded crest to like push your hero up into their couple, up to like the borderline, but that's basically it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. I just don't think there's a better solution.
Did you like the Rishi wraps boots? Did that matter for you at all? I feel
I
like I
totally
did.
forgot about, like, I set them and I forget them, and that was basically
Yeah.
it.
The thing I liked most about this tier, and the thing that I would compliment most, are the tier sets. So they did something with tier sets for this one, which was unique, which was they keyed the tier sets onto your hero talents rather than your base spec, and I think that was fantastic. I loved that. I played multiple different classes on multiple different specs, and all of them. I mean, maybe there are bad. I'm sure there are bad tier sets. Cool, whatever. I'm anybody can kvetch at me, kvetch in the comments if you had a shitty tier set. But I just think that that's neat. I want them to do cool tier sets, and these were cool tier sets. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. 100%. Do we have anything else we want to talk about with the raid before we get into our past few weeks?
I don't think so. I think that's about that.
All right. Well, how was your past few weeks?
My past few weeks. Well, I've been doing a lot. Maybe I haven't been doing that much. I've been playing Magic. I played Magic with your decks a whole bunch. We played. Were you there for my? I had like a one night where I won twice. I won on Takesha. I won on something else. Were you there that day?
Maybe. What was the other deck you went on?
I played Takesha and I won. And I think I maybe won on Frodo and Sam.
No, I wasn't there. I haven't been around Frodo and Sam for a while.
Okay, so I kind of had this streak. The other day I played Frodo and Sam, and I had a win against some people who I don't remember. And oh, you know what? This was the week of your. I think this week of the week of your wedding. I had an insanely cool Frodo and Sam win, which I want to brag about because I have this thing that I've been talking to sort of Rachel about, which is about whether or not the decks are good or I'm an exceptional player kind of thing. Frank said to me after my Takesha win that day, he said that Takesha deck is a beast. It truly is sort of a monster. And I take the compliment. Listen, Frank, if you're listening, I take the compliment. But I also have this question of like, is Takesha a really good deck? Or am I piloting it well? Like, if I were to give Takesha to anybody else in the pod, would they be able to rip wins out of it in the same way that I have? And the Frodo and Sam deck made me think about this too, because in that deck I had a Mirkwood Bats and an Academy Manufactor, and I did this thing where I baited a piece of removal from Josh that he left a bunch of mana open, so on his end step I did a thing in order to get him to remove something on my board, and then I dawned everything out of the graveyard because I knew I had a dawn in there, but nobody else was tracking it, kind of thing. And I was just thinking of that as like, this was a lethal that I found that I don't think anybody else would have been able to. I think most people would have done a bunch of damage and then passed turn because it couldn't really like get the last few pieces in there. But because I could kind of see the crazy line, I was able to sort of like get to the other side of. And a similar thing happened with Takesha, where we were playing a couple of different we were doing a couple of different things. People were setting up. There were a bunch of dangerous kind of boards, and then all of a sudden I just kind of was like, okay, I am gonna dig. I'm like digging for the win here. Like we're gonna go for it. And I played a 5-minute turn where I did the double approach the second sun, and it was complicated and it was hard, but I kind of got there. And after those 2 wins, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give these decks a break because I just sort of want to chill. And you had given me your deck, so the next time that we played, it was very much about playing your decks. I played a game on AC, which I pretty much dominated. Josh was playing Jeff, and I flipped a Concordant Crossroads, I think is the card that gives everything haste. It's a world enchantment. Very strange card. But I flipped a Concordant Crossroads under the Jeff, and somebody else played it, and then it looped back around to my turn, and I Rite of Replicationed a Rampaging Baloths, and then ripped 9 lands on the turn.
Oh, Jesus.
So I made like, no, it was 5 lands on the turn, so I made like 40 Baloths or something like that. And then I had 44 4s, and I just spread them all out and I attacked for them. And I did also fuck Raylana over because she had the board wipe that I had saved a counter spell for, and she was very mad about it. So, Ray, if you're listening, I am still sorry that I did that to you because, it's painful and it sucks and I get it. And then we played with your decks where they racked up some wins. I played a Jeff game that was pretty stupid, where I had an amazing play, which was Sarian attacked me with a 14/14 raccoon that he had put a bunch of fucking counters on. He had made thickest in the thicket. All I had was a Chaos Wand and 4 open mana. And for those of you who don't know, Chaos Wand has the text, 4 mana and you tap it, you exile cards from the top of any player's library until you hit an instant or sorcery, and then you cast that instant or sorcery, basically. So he attacks me with this 14/14, and I was like, I don't have removal, so the answer is I just need to rip the Chaos Wand. And I kind of didn't think anybody else was going to have the removal on them either, so I did it to myself, where I eventually found, it was like Trade Secrets or something, some card that I can't remember, where you swap control of an artifact that you control with a creature that they control. So I swapped control of the 14/14 with the Chaos Wand, which I thought was just like the most Jeff play of all time. Ripping into the Chaos Wand deep enough in order to get there. It's funny because I have long thought that the correct answer to Jeff is you protect Jeff when you're behind, because you need Jeff's variance in order to catch up, and you attack Jeff when you're ahead because you need to decrease, when you're ahead you decrease variance, when you're behind you increase variance, kind of thing. But it seems like nobody else agrees with me. Everybody really fucking hates Jeff and just kept attacking me and attacking Jeff just to send it a fucking message, which was, I don't know, I guess that was fair enough.
You got to play with Jeff before I had made or after I'd made some modifications I haven't played with, which is give it a little bit more kind of coherent game plan, which is things that act off of draw on both you and your opponents rather than just kind of chaos for chaos sake. So it's not a ton of cards, but I was I put a Scrawling Crawler and a Psychosis Crawler, I think were the names of them, into the deck.
Almost, I could have swayed the stars.
Oh, okay.
Jeff, because Jeff had flipped. I think Josh. This was on the Josh game where Josh had flipped Sway the Stars on Jeff, and I was playing AC, so I had a gazillion mana, and I was like, wouldn't it be fucking funny if I ripped Slay the Stars, and then I hit that Rite of Replication, and just won the game instead because. I don't know. I guess winning is more important to me than being stupid or whatever.
Being stupid is Jeff's job. Not
yeah, exactly. When you're playing AC, the intention is to win. I played a Yurlok game that was insanely fun where I did very poorly. Yurlok also generates a ton of aggro. I have found, as well as Jeff. Maybe it's just because I'm piloting these decks and I was on a winning streak in the first place. So I did not do very well with the Yurlok deck, though I did a couple of sweet, stupid plays, one of which was I played a Rite of Replication, and was basically just like, see guys, you have to keep me alive so that you're drawing all these cards and generating all this mana. And then everyone was like, no, go fuck yourself. And they kept attacking and killing me. And then Josh played the rabbits and had all of the rabbits in the third game, where he ripped a pretty commanding win with just these fucking rabbits. It was that deck, just you have to wrath. Your only answer, kill it. Kill the rabbits.
Kill the rabbit.
Another way to, I don't think there's another way to win or to play that. There was a very sweet. Josh had a truly sweet play, which was combining the thing that phases all of your shit out, so it exiles it until the end of the turn with a destroy all effect. So he was able to wipe the board and then phase in a truly heinous number of these fucking rabbits. And wiped the board of non-tokens and then blinked his own non-tokens to generate just even more fucking rabbits. And I was like, well, I guess that's that. So that's all the commander that we played. So your deck's got a lot of action.
Nice. Very happy.
I feel like there was more, but I don't really remember. We didn't play Dargo. I had intended to play the new configuration of Dargo because I really want to see how that deck works. but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we'll have an opportunity soon, hopefully. Maybe tomorrow.
True.
We'll see. We'll see if
Maybe
the weather
tomorrow,
holds.
as long as the storm doesn't kill us tomorrow, I think
Yeah.
the answer will probably be yes.
Yeah. All right. Oh, so I do have a thing on my end. You told me that you thought that season 2 of Avatar was peak, right? Like that was your
Yeah, the Earth book. I think it's better than both the first and third seasons.
Do you have any thoughts as to why that is? And any particular thoughts?
The introduction of Azula is very important for the the context of Avatar. So creating an actionable villain, like a villain who can do stuff and exert pressure on the plot, who is not Zuko or Zhao, right? The Azula's big thing is that she's very clever, which is typically good for a villain. Like she's clever, she's manipulative, and then she brings her own little henchmen, like Mai and Ty Lee, which is good. The other big thing is that Zuko is undergoing his arc here. His arc actually happens mostly here, right, where you get Zuko alone, you get his conflict with Iroh, and with Azula, and trying to resolve whether or not he even sees himself kind of like going back and forth with the Fire Nation. Obviously, spoilers, but he ends that arc in a pretty dark place, which is just so devastating, right? But it's it's the end of the second act, kind of lowest moment, piece of the puzzle, sort of all of the rest of that. And then the final piece is really Toph, I would say, where I think Toph is the final piece of Team Avatar, where she brings this just like balancing force, where she can tell jokes and do fun stuff, but also isn't, stepping on sort of Sokka. Aang kind of has upbeat jokes. Sokka is like sarcastic or whatever. Anyway, all of that stuff combines to make the second season of Avatar excellent. So yeah.
Wrong. The answer is that it's literally The Empire Strikes Back. That's literally what up to and including.
You think it's literally The Empire Strikes Back?
He goes to the weird, funny,
oh my
fucking
God.
mystic, and has to leave at the last moment because his friends are in trouble, and like has to lose the call to like go, and like it is just like so much Empire Strikes Back.
That specific moment does mirror The Empire Strikes Back pretty cleanly.
No, but it has that whole ending, right? Like it looks up and then everything goes to shit, right? Like Zuko being on the other side is the equivalent of Han being frozen in carbonite, right? Like it is, there's some like really obvious things here, like Fire Lord Azula is played by Mark Hamill, right? Like there's a lot of little things here, right? Like but like literally as I'm watching, I'm like, this is The Empire Strikes Back. Like especially once they hit that end sequence, I'm like, this is Empire Strikes Back. Is this literally just going to be Empire Strikes Back? It's literally just Empire Strikes Back, right? Of course it's peak. It's Empire Strikes Back, right? Like, but no, you're absolutely right.
Here's the funny thing. On an instinctive level, I want to agree with you, because I think of, The Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars as being these like foundational story. This is like when I make this point that Kung Fu Panda is Star Wars: A New Hope, but done better, I could go that route here, but I actually just don't think it doesn't map cleanly enough to be accurate, right? Like, sure, Aang does this one moment that is a similar moment to The Empire Strikes Back, where he flees from the mentor to go help his friends, and
but his arc is essentially Luke's arc, right? Like he is the chosen one that is of this lost kind of like mystical line of people that don't exist anymore because of the evil empire, right? And he has to like learn how to actually be that. And that is his arc. And the end of Empire is him prematurely rejecting the call because his friends are in danger, right? Like because, and it's not perfect. It's not one, and you're not wrong, right?
The thing that bothers me is Zuko, the operative character in the operative character towards the end of the second book isn't Aang, it is Zuko, right? It
Sure.
is his arc. I would actually make the case that in kind of the same way that, like, you know, Mad Max Fury Road is Furiosa's story, but Max is the protagonist. Book 2 of Avatar it's Aang's story, right? But Zuko is the protagonist. It's his growth that defines kind of the plot and where things are going. And all of the stuff at the end of that is about Zuko. It's not about Aang, which is completely different towards The Empire Strikes Back. That everything
Sure.
is defined by Luke, right? So this is really the place where I would kind of like want to quibble. When I think of what makes the second book of Avatar great, I'm always thinking about fucking Zuko stuff. And you know, it is just heartbreaking to when Zuko attacks Aang with his sister, because he's so close to it. And also, I just want to say for the record, because I watched these, you have to understand, like, there's this other level. I did not binge this, right? We watched these live when
Sure.
nobody knew where any of this was going. And it had been such a long-standing fan theory that Katara was going to use that special water to heal Zuko's scar, and Zutara was a very famous ship at the time.
Sure.
I guess it still is, to be honest with you. I prefer Zutara. I kind of think Aang sucks, or not sucks. He's just like not
Aang rotates between being like an innocent child and horny for Katara, right? Like, you know, it is kind of jarring. It's better in the second season, but it is very, very apparent. Like, the first season was big kid show vibes, right? Like that was my biggest problem with the first season, was that it felt like a kid show, whereas like it kind of like grows into something that I think is like, you know, I understand why people love it so much second season, and we haven't seen the third. I haven't watched the third season yet, so you know, it's
yeah, the second season. God, the second season. Like, I watched we had this thing with the drill, the episode like with the drill and Pa Sing Se. We watched that live. We watched the library and Appa getting kidnapped live. Oh, and that Tales of Ba Sing Se, where you like learn about Appa and about Iroh's son or whatever. There's not a dry eye in the house for any of that kind of stuff. And there really is just this magic to watching all of that live. I watched all of the third season live too, right? Like, all of that stuff was it was the new episode of Avatar. We watched the whole thing, you know, whatever, Day of the Black Sun, Sozin's Comet, all of the stuff that is foreshadowed and comes to whatever conclusions. No spoilers, obviously, for your sanity kind of thing. But like, all of that stuff, we watched that live too, but just nothing hit the same way that just like every episode in the back 10 episodes of book 2 was like such a thing. God, Zuko going on the date with the T-girl. Are you kidding me? Anyway, so yes, all of that is why Avatar, the second season of Avatar, is like such insanely good television.
No, I agree. And like, you know, this is the advantage, like, you know, the reason that, you know, like, I think it's more of a yes and than like a no, it's not. Like the one plot is Empire. The other, like, the Zuko plot happens because it's a television show, right? Like, you know, and not a 2-hour movie, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. In a certain sense, the Zuko plot is like Anakin, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like if you would put, you know, the prequels on top of whatever else. Like, Zuko's anguish is pretty fucking real.
Yeah.
And he has this kind of moment of not quite redemption, because he doesn't really get there, but he gets so close is the part that is just like so heart-wrenching. I mean, we were all there when it ended, and we were all just like, where does it go from here? Where does he go from here? You know, like, just that question is so tremendously brutal. And then obviously Azula lightning striking Aang in the Avatar state. That's Empire Strikes Back feels, right?
I don't know. One of my fundamental kind of problems is the thing that like bothers me is that like lightning to me is always like an air element rather than the fire one. But you know, that's different universe, different rules. Just kind of always hits me the wrong way. We still haven't gotten the Chekhov's gun firing of Zuko. I assume Zuko redirects lightning at some point. I thought that was going to happen at the end of this season. Because Iroh teaches him how to redirect lightning.
Through his
But it's
stomach,
like,
yeah,
but it's
from the
like,
water
oh,
benders.
and he's like, oh, shoot me with lightning so I can practice. Like, no, you hope you never have to use this, right? Like, it is far too dangerous, right? Like,
Yeah, then he goes up onto the mesa and is like, you know, you've never held back before. Why are
yeah,
you? God, it's the angst. Okay, it's
yeah.
so good. There are a couple of things. There are a couple of things that I'm really glad I did like live like that, and Avatar is going to be one of them, right? Where I like being 16 and watching Zuko do that stuff. Or actually, another good one would be Star Wars, right? Like watching Revenge of the Sith when I was 14 and really identifying with Anakin's angst is like it'll just never hit the same way for someone who is, discovering this stuff after these kinds of formative moments.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What else?
What else happened in in Europa? So I understand that you went to Budapest.
Yes.
And
From Budapest to Passau, stopping in Bratislava, Vienna, Krems was just and Linz. We only stopped in Linz, or rather, we stopped in Linz, and we decided we took one of the options we could do is go to Czech Republic for a day, go to Český Krumlov, which is in an old city. Basically, the things I learned. Well, first of all, I didn't really think about it until like the second time I heard it. Is like, oh, this is all the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, right? So,
yep.
Two things I learned. Everybody really loves Empress Sisi, who was like, a queen at some point. And everybody hates the communists, right? Which is great. Like, because everybody talks about the fall of communism. Things I learned: Hungarians do not clink their glasses, but there's this story, probably apocryphal. Hungary attempts to, rebel and gain independence from the Austro-Hungarian Empire at some point, and the generals of that rebellion are all executed. And the story goes that every time one was executed, they clinked glasses, and so. Like the Austrian aristocrats would clink glasses at every execution. So you don't clink glasses in Hungary. What else? Other little things did I learn? I don't know. Everybody has like similar stuff with like the big dessert in Hungary is this thing called the chimney cake, which is basically spun, like bread with sugar on it that they do over a fire. The original version is just this big tall cake that you eat plain. Modern versions, you fill it with, like, it's hollow in the middle, so like you can fill it with stuff. And every country along the way had like their own version with a slightly different name. And like, I did some, and like, they were like, oh, this is an old, Viennese or, Austrian dessert. This is an old, Czech dessert. It's like reading, it's like, this was kind of a thing, but mostly it's popular now because it was popular in Hungary and like traveled up the, up the Danube, right?
Mm-hmm.
In modern times, it's like for tourists or whatever. Similarly, they all have this variation of a dessert called that's like, I'm not gonna get the name right, but it's basically torn fried pancakes with sauce on it. It's fine. It's tasty. What's Mr. Collins missed us very much, and so he's been talking to us a lot. Kaiserschmarrn, which is that's the Austrian name for it. I have to ban someone who is doing spam in the chat. What else? I did play a couple games while I was on vacation. I played some Gigasword. I am sorry, buddy. It's not my favorite game.
Did you crash out on like the first 8 minutes of cutscene or whatever? This is what most people have told me. There's this like really early, incredibly long cutscene that you can't skip through.
I almost did. No, the thing that actually crashed me out was the game actually crashed at some point. And I lost a bunch of progress. I was like, I am not enjoying this enough to redo it. I think the problem is it is trying to be kind of like Dark Souls and like the big commit to moves, but it mostly feels clunky, and I found it unsatisfying and unintuitive to kind of like get all these moves to work around some of these enemies, right? Like the shielded knight, I could never get the rhythm down right to either break the shield or fight through it. I just kind of felt like I just ended up spamming moves and hoping I would get through it. And I had enough built up power that like I could usually make it work. But like the bosses didn't feel the bosses didn't feel particularly difficult. It just felt like, I gotta have to learn the pattern and hope that I can live through the couple of things that I find hard to deal with.
Sure.
And I also didn't find the story compelling enough to want to push through and finish. I got pretty far, I think. Like I had most of the powers on the sword, and I had just found the statue, and he was like, "She looks familiar. I'm feeling something." And then like I said, I think the player the player position desync, like the error message I got was something like player out of bounds or something. I had noticed that when I was looking at the map that I didn't appear to be in the place that I thought I was supposed to be. So I think some desync issue happened there, but it was like one of those things where it's like, I know, like it crashed out and I know I hadn't saved for a while. So it's like, I don't want to go through.
I totally understand that. Listen, I've been there a million times. So
that happened with you in Avowed, right? Like,
yes, I keep meaning to go back to Avowed because of how that happened to me with Avowed, where I got a crash. It happened to me twice with Avowed because I was getting crashes when I was playing it through Game Pass, like through the Xbox console. So I was like, well, I'm going to install this through Battle.net and see if that worked, and it did work, but Battle.net doesn't use the same save files as the Xbox console, which is a truly fucking insane decision, by the way. How the fuck did they I'm like still mad about it. Okay. And,
so it's
I
not
had to
like you couldn't drag the file over. It just
it could I had to start over. It was a little bit more complicated than that, and there's some aspect of user error in this, which
Sure.
is that I had to delete things inside of the save file in order to make it work, and I think I deleted the wrong thing, and I essentially corrupted my own save file by doing this, because I was, this was on launch weekend, and I was reading Reddit threads where people were like, oh, I did it on the Battle.net client and it worked better, but in order to do that you have to go into the save file and delete this thing, and I went in and I deleted the wrong thing, I guess, and it corrupted the file and I couldn't make it work. And then later when I was playing on Battle.net, I had another crash, and I just hadn't saved in a while, and I was like, fuck this game. I'm too mad.
No, fair enough.
But I do intend to go back, I will at some point, I'm sure, go back to experience Avowed and take a look at some of these things. It is funny because I never want to hold this kind of thing a game, like technical considerations like this, but it is the thing that makes me bounce off of a game more than anything else, right? Is just if I am not in love with a game and it presents me with some technical hurdle that is going to introduce frustration into my experience, God, how often do I just let it ride and I go, you know what, man, I can just go fucking play World of Warcraft and it'll be fine. So
no, I totally feel it. Like, obviously there's, I would like to think slightly more principled stance where if I can't rebind the keys to work with me being left-handed, then I'll just be like, I can go do something else with my time. I don't need to give you my time or money. But I feel that. Yeah. I have also been playing a ton of Arc Raid. Since I got back, I am almost not all the way. I am more through the progression again because on vacation I connected to shitty boat internet to download the update so I could send my guy off on an expedition. When I was in Switzerland, I was in a hotel and had a slightly more stable internet connection. I tried to play a game and just playing with the controller was so miserable that I was just nope, I'm done with this. I got in the elevator, left, and it's I'm just not gonna be have my 5 million and I only got 1 extra skill points instead of 5, but it has been fun going through everything again. But I think there's an interesting thing to happen here. I think the game has a water finds a crack problem, which is the optimal way to play Arc Raiders is to play pacifist. And the thing is they sort people into lobbies with like people. So like they will put pacifists with other pacifists, and they will put like PvPers with other PvPers. And so I think the optimal way to like progress stuff is to be pacifist, but I think you need just a little bit of you need a few rats to really like ratchet the tension up and keep the game tense and fun. And I think there are too few rats in the pacifist games. I think they need to actively mix in more rats into the pacifist lobbies.
I totally understand. I would call this the pitcher problem, right? Which is that in the game of baseball, if you have a perfect pitcher, then the game doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
If you have a perfect pitcher who strikes out every batter, there's really no action or activity in the game. Like if you pitch a perfect game. And that's exactly what this sounds like to me, right? Which is that, you know, in a world, in the same way that a perfect pitcher reduces friction to 0, therefore there is no action in the game. The same thing probably happens when it comes to like loading pacifists with pacifists, and then the game just becomes a lootathon, right?
Yeah.
Where you're just running out. I actually think foundationally, this is part of what made I didn't quite clock this until later, but I think this is part of what made Sarian go so insane for Arc Raiders, because I know that he loves these lootathon games like Pacific Drive or anything like that, or Fallout, you know, like games where you can just like sit there and you empty out some dungeon or something for every piece of valuable stuff, and you bring it all back to your base because, you know, why not, kind of thing. You just sort of obsessively hoard around these things. And Arc Raiders is kind of the sort of PvE version, you know, PvE version of that. So I will say, this is not me throwing any shade, because Sarian is a true homie who, hours before the expedition, did hit me with a, hey, do you want a bunch of stuff? And so we logged on, and right now I am deeply tricked out because I didn't go on the expedition. I don't think I'm ever going to. And, you know, because I only play with you guys and I haven't been playing all that much recently. And so he just tossed me everything that was epic, everything that was like crazy legendary, a gazillion blueprints, right? Just like, you know, he was talking about how for a long time he was he was holding stuff in his inventory specifically because it was expensive, so that he could, you know, he could go on his expedition and hit the 5 million kind of cap. But then he just started running out of inventory space, so he just started selling the stuff in his inventory, and he eventually got to 5,000 he like 5,000 raider bucks or whatever it is, that, or 5 million raider bucks that you need in order to. And so he's like, so actually everything in my inventory is kind of worthless, so you could just have it all. And so he passed it all my way. So if you want any free fucking, you know, runs with a super tricked out me, I guess we can make that happen.
Yeah.
He also said to me that it was depressing how quickly and efficiently he was able to get things back together after, like, it was almost, because he had already mastered all of these optimal things and how to get all of whatever, just starting a fresh character doing all of that stuff put him so much further ahead than he had ever really expected. So, you know.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. Like, I am most of the way there, and I think I do think a big part of it, because I know Sarian plays basically full pacifist, is that like the number of runs that were frustrating in the moment, but like really helped like drive like the engagement with the game, where like I lost a bunch of stuff because some rat decided to shoot me in the back of the fucking head, right? Like, you know, that was frustrating in the moment, but really kind of like helped drive the loop. At this point, it's like I know the enemies too well, so like the arc aren't as much of a hindrance. If you try and fight a big one, lots of randos will be like, I'll help, and just like help you kill the thing, right? Like, you know, and then won't shoot you in the back and murder you. It's just basically, I feel like the thing I need to do is go shoot somebody in the head so that I get placed in slightly more PvP lobbies, but I will feel so bad doing that I don't actually want to do that.
Yeah, you know. I also think that Arc Raiders may have just like a loot generation problem. This is like a, in WoW terms, this would be like a gold sync problem, right? Where the game is constantly just spawning value for a player in terms of whatever gold and items and stuff like that in World of Warcraft. In Arc Raiders is doing the exact same thing, right? And I just think that the rates of kill are low enough that the value generation that players are getting is actually truly insane and probably much higher than they anticipated or kind of like built at the extraction shooter kind of around. I don't know the full story of this, but apocryphally I was having a conversation with, so we were talking about the 5 million number. They basically said that 5 million feels like it was higher than they intended for this, and it's kind of because the game popped off and is also sort of easier than it was supposed to be.
Give me
which,
1 second.
Again, which again, I can't prove that that's the case. I don't know that that's real. I have no conception for. I have no conception for what's
the thing he was trying to eat or something. He's okay.
I get that. So I would never be able to prove any of this. There's no insight into their offices. Maybe they did peg the number at 5 million from the beginning or whatever. But I would not be surprised if Arc Raiders is taking off with a class of player that they didn't necessarily expect it to, which is, kind of a friend sloppier sort of Helldivers 2-esque player who is used to the PvE side of things much more than the PvP side of things. And I would not be surprised if that like kind of fucked with some of the underlying assumptions that their incentives are built around.
So something that I heard someone say online and I think I agree with is that like 5 million is actually a bad thing for them to be doing for the expedition, because traditionally with a server reset like Tarkov is when you know the reset's coming, that's when you pull like your good shit out of the vault and you just like fucking go buck wild with it, right? Like, ideally, Sarian would on December 22nd, which was the day that everybody, or December 21st maybe, like before on Expedition Eve, would be out there with his purple items, just fucking with people, right? Because there's no reason not to, right? Because it's the end of the end of the road, and maybe Sarian wouldn't because he's nice, and maybe I saw some videos on Expedition Eve, I went out and I just gave away my stuff to randos in the lobby who weren't going on the expedition, right? Like something like that, right? But because that cash cap is I think it's high for most people, right? Like you have to be like a weird, a heavy player for it not to be. It encourages people to hoard instead of playing with that gear, right? Like I didn't play with a lot of my purple gear because I was afraid to lose it. And the thing that's supposed to be the forcing function there is you're going to leave, and you're going to lose it at some point. Like you're going to just lose it by the nature of the fact that like a reset's happening, right? And with the expedition being the reset, you should have the freedom to go and do that. And I think so. People think, and I think this has to be right, is that the next expedition is going to use a different metric for the it has to be something that like will let you spend your loot at some level. And we'll see. And maybe not the next one, but like I think that has to be the thing for the long-term viability. It has to be a thing that lets you like use your loot in the kind of like waning days. Also, like I said, I think they just have to more aggressively mix the PvPers and the PvEers, because I think it is too easy to get into like a basically risk-free version of the game that just like it's too easy to get into a risk-free version of the game that like also like the loot generation problem is that like that's also like the most optimal way to play the game, right? Like you want it to be valuable enough that it's actually tempting to defect, like in like the medium to long term, right? Like it needs to be a thing that you can do and it not feel terrible. Like I've been following content online. One of the guys this is the guy I heard some of this from, is that like he's a big PvPer, right? And he just like forced himself into pacifist lobbies by just like playing pacifist for like 10 or 12 games. And the way he put it is that like if you can't attack a big arc in solos in the PvP lobbies because someone will just run over and fucking kill you, right? Like you can't do any of the big projects in PvP because in the PvP heavy lobbies because it attracts too much attention from the other players. And so I think for the health of both sides of that, I think you need a little bit more aggressive mixing, or at least like a toggle to allow it to happen, right? Like, I know there are people that get mad that that they don't have a PvE mode, but like, I just don't think the game's got legs without a little bit more aggressive mixing.
This reminds me of war mode. This reminds me of like
Yeah.
PvP servers and PvE servers and sort of like World of Warcraft. I think it would be a gigantic mistake if they were to make a PvP mode or any kind of toggle that would allow you to toggle off PvP, because then you do just, I mean, it's like even almost deeper in a way than water finds a crack. Basically what I think is it's a friction problem, right? Where, and I almost like feel like we could do a whole cast on this. In my mind, friction is sort of the defining gameplay concept of maybe the latter half of the 2010s into the early 2010s. Like the last 10 years has kind of been really defined around the concept of what is acceptable levels of friction in our games. And I think the answer for an intense number of players has been as close to zero as possible. And when you give players that option, right? If you tell a player, "Hey, you can opt out." Oh, you hate getting a bunch of cool loot and then somebody rat fucking you on the way out? Well, you can click a button to stop that from happening. They will click that button.
Yeah.
And the game is built on players creating the friction, right? Like most of the friction that is going to be generated for mid to high tier Arc Raiders is going to be generated. It's not going to be generated by the electric storm. It's not going to be generated by the Arc. It's going to be generated by the other players, right? When you get to that mid level, then I already kind of feel like I'm at, and I have not played this much. The Arc are an annoyance. They are not a danger anymore. They kind of stop being friction. And the introduction of anything to sweep players out of that equation is, oh boy, that would be terrible.
Yeah.
So I think I probably agree with your is really kind of the bedrock of what I would sort of say. I also sort of think that in general, I'm really interested to sort of see what the longevity of something like Arc Raiders sort of looks like, because the progression over the course of one season is interesting, but I actually think it's going to be the progression over the course of like four that will sort of define the game in its sort of kind of like sum total. So yeah.
Yeah, I think part of it too is that like the loot depth isn't super deep, and like I think the second run is just not as fun as the first, and they need to inject some more stuff in that, or like maybe it's just kind of like I need to stop sweating for like a week or two. Like
I actually think if it were me and I were diagnosing this, I would think it's actually probably something that they ought to have solved on the PvE side rather than the PvE side by introducing different or better or whatever enemies. So for instance, on the Helldivers is doing does a similar kind of thing. But this is a PvE only game, right? And so the way that they solve these problems is they create new interesting kind of encounters for people to, so all of a sudden the automatons have an AT-AT fucking walker that is sitting there spawning gigantic tanks that you have to kill. And that's crazy. Or now you have this giant bug sandworm thing that is going to pop out of the ground like fucking Shai Hulud, and you have a new big crazy boss to fight. Or we're going to introduce an entirely new faction, and they're the Illuminated, and they look and act like this, right? Like they solve these problems raw on the PvE side by making the encounters themselves sort of different. And my expectation is that it would be less fun to go back and do a prestige on a game where there isn't that kind of a change that's happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that like the Christmas event was happening, and there's like the winter the chilled stuff, which is fun, but there's not as much to stretch for, I guess is what I'm gonna say, right? Like, and maybe the addition. So they put out a second smaller battle pass, which chewed through most of my excess credits. I think maybe that's part of it too. I'm glad they put a cap on the credits, because that means that like the next pass, the third pass, I will actually have to play to get credits for, and so I'll have something to play for. And they also added some little things like if you cap out credits, like I'm capped or I'm close to capped on credits, and there's this, you can buy things with those buy like just normal items with that credits in one of the vendors.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like a reason to kind of keep like pushing that kind of stuff. I guess trials is the other thing. The problem is that I played so much the past 2 or 3 days that like I've kind of like played myself out a little bit too much. So probably gonna take a break. Probably gonna boot up Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is like the thing to.
Hey, listen, that's Hungary, right? Is that where that's set? Or Bohemia or something?
Yeah. That area of the world. Yeah.
Somewhere in Central Europe, if that is a political thing that exists. Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, it's interesting because I've been playing a lot of Battlegrounds, which just had a seasonal reset. Battlegrounds for all of last season, I told myself I wasn't going to pay into it. So the thing that the Battlegrounds does is you buy the pass. So at the beginning of the match, you get 2 heroes to choose from, but you can get 4 if you buy the pass. So you can just like choose your introductory hero a little bit more effectively. And you also, it's actually technically 5 because you get a free reroll every game. So normally you get these reroll tokens every once in a while, and now you essentially can just reroll for 0. So you can always reroll one, like your worst hero, to see if you can get somebody like cool or interesting to sort of play. And I feel like this has been the pattern for me for the longest time, which is I'm playing a bunch of Battlegrounds. I'm like, ooh, this is actually great. And actually, I'm having a lot of fun. I might as well buy the pass. I'll get all the stuff. I'm already like max level or whatever. And I'll get to choose cooler heroes kind of thing. So I bought the pass kind of at the tail end of the season. And then what happens is in the new season, I buy the pass and then I never fucking play. I just bounce off of the season sort of entirely. And I felt that happening to me pretty quickly in sort of the new season, and I was very annoyed that I was like, I'm gonna waste another $20 because I bought the pass on day 1 because I didn't want to lose access to the 4 heroes, and I was already in the thick of playing a lot of Battlegrounds, so I'm just gonna keep playing fucking Battlegrounds. But then I was having I don't think I came in the top 4 in a lobby for like 25 fucking games. I just could not get the new sort of strategies around. But I have now, in fact, gotten multiple first place finishes with the new patch, and I actually think I like this patch better than the previous patch now that I've kind of like figured it out. And I think there's something there in the like when you're doing a PvP game, the way that you do a seasonal reset is you really shake up the meta. So in Hearthstone or in Battlegrounds, when there's a seasonal reset, it comes with a change to the pool of stuff you're using. So they're going to rotate a bunch of minions in and out of the Battlegrounds pool, which is sort of how it works for an auto battler, right? You just have new synergies, you have new stuff you're playing for. There's no more APM Murlocs, but there is APM Beasts or something like that, right? Like new kind of archetypes that you're sort of playing towards. And volumizer mechs are the great, so much fun. The flip side of this, which is like changing tools, right? The flip side of this is in the PvE game, like I was explaining about Helldivers. That's where you choose enemies. The tools are the exact same in Helldivers. If I were to load up Helldivers today, I'm using the exact same tools I was years ago. 2 years ago when we first started playing the game. There would be more of them. I could get more, but my tools are fundamentally sort of the same. What I feel like maybe the expedition in Arc Raiders is kind of missing is actually either end of that equation. You can imagine a world where you do your expedition, but all of the weapons are gone that you used are gone, and they have a whole new set of weapons that feel and play completely different. And maybe now you have gray shotguns, and I don't even know how I would even conceive of this. Like, but like new consumables, new whatever, like tools that I am using in order to win are completely sort of different. This is like the Battlegrounds version of things where in order to get first place in lobbies, I need to understand the tools that I have at my disposal better. Or they needed to do the thing that Helldivers does, which is to completely change the stuff you're fighting against. And so adding in new factions or changing the arc or any of those kind of other kinds of things. I kind of feel like they probably did too little on either of those fronts. But also at the same time, I don't know, man, it's a new game. Maybe
Yeah.
they just need time to get there.
No, I agree, and I'm not like I don't hate it or anything. It just might be
Yeah.
taking a little bit slower. I think maybe the I think you could have done that would have been a little bit easier. And this is the thing they did, so you can already start putting towards the next expedition, and the upgrade materials are the materials to go on the second expedition are slightly different than the first ones. So
Okay.
like my thought is like you could if you randomized part of the upgrades, you couldn't. Part of the issue here is that I know that I'm going to need, X number of like fried motherboards or whatever to hit the next step in like the next upgrade of my workshop, right? And so when I found them out in the world, right, in the first time around, I like sold them or deconstructed them for parts, right? And when I hit it, I was like, oh God, oh darn it, I have to go find another 3 of these, right? Which was a reason to keep playing. I found those 3 motherboards, right, like early on, and I just kept them in my bank, so when I needed them, I just had them. Which I actually think is like a problem, right? Like, and I think maybe if you semi-randomized the upgrades for each person so you didn't know what you had to get, that would help. Although I think maybe you just have people hoarding bunches of items. I think it's part of the problem is that like there's not as much drive to kind of like replace stuff, and part of this is that like is the pacifist lobbies, right? Is that like if you were churning loot faster, then you have things to spend your loot on. If you're not, then you just kind of have loot, right? Like you need a reason to churn loot, and historically, like, and sometimes that happens with the arc, right? Like if you bite off more than you can chew, with certain arc, you'll get a reset. But like as you get better at the game, that's less of a problem, and so the thing has to be other players, right? And part of the problem is that like the loot, I don't think the loot pool is deep enough to kind of have bigger chases. That's part of it too. But it might get.
Do you think Marathon is going to? I mean, we were talking a little bit about Marathon while you were away. Do you feel like they have a good solution to this problem?
I think part of the solution to the problem is that Marathon and Bungie do lore very well, and so that's going to be enough of a driving force that like Marathon specifically has deep lore, and I trust Bungie to be good with lore. So first of all, I think the loot's going to be deeper, and second of all, past the loot grind, diving for more bits of lore, I think is going to be compelling enough on its own. That's going to not be a problem. I have also, from people who have been in the earlier tests, they said that like Marathon's a lot more PvP oriented than Arc Raiders is. I don't know if that's a thing that will hold true into the real game, just because people might be different, right? Apparently Tarkov is super PvP heavy. I don't know if that's the type of player it attracts. If it's like how aggressively they mix pacifists, and like if Tarkov, like you could just like not track this stuff and like mix everybody at random, and I think it would work, right? Like like people were predicting that Arc Raiders was eventually going to go in this direction, because that's just kind of how these games go. Is that people who stay on longer tend to be more aggressive people, and so the game tends towards more PvP. And I wonder if maybe that's what's happening. Some aspect of this is happening here. It's like the people are bifurcating further, right? Like that it's harder to get like a good mix in when you don't have like maybe the game's just too antipodal, right? Like there's not enough mid-level, like there's not enough like sus players, right? Which is like this kind of like people who will maybe occasionally take an opportunistic kill, right? But generally are cooperators. Maybe there just aren't enough of those people to kind of like put enough spice in the game. Like I kind
of think that the problem is even deeper than that, to be honest with I actually think that most of these pacifists will end up washing from the game entirely because I tend to think of these players as mastery driven players. And especially in a world where my tools are the exact same, my skill tree is the exact same, my upgrade paths are the exact same, right? Like, maybe you stick around for that, but generally speaking, I think of these players as just like moving on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, when I think about maybe Warhammer, Total War Warhammer 3 is a kind of an okay example. When I play a new DLC character, I play that character and I am figuring them out. I'm trying to go, okay. Oh, I see. And then this currency. All right. And so, and then your upgrade path, you really upgrade these units. Okay, cool. It's pretty rare that I end up going back to a character that I have played before. There are like 5 of them that I have run. I mean, maybe like 3 of them that I have beaten multiple campaigns on. Like, I think I've beaten Deathmaster Snickitch, so that's Skaven Eshin, Orion a million times. I've played, Wood Elves, obviously. And maybe those 2 are it. I don't know that I've ever beaten the game with another character. Normally, I'm trying to find like a new thing so that so there's some discovery, something new to learn and figure out and all that kind of thing. And my expectation is that these are the kinds of players who, when they run out of the upgrade tree, they just churn and they're going to go off and do sort of whatever else. PvP players are not players who I think are motivated in the same way. They don't care. They are there to win and for the competitive thrill of winning. And so I would not be surprised if the aggressive players stick around because that's kind of the point, is they're playing for the PvP side of the game.
Yeah, and maybe the PvE players washing out kind of helps solve this problem, right?
Yeah.
Like that, you just naturally get some more mixing. Because I think there is, like, I think part of the problem is that like you want to be like, the way I would ideally like to play, I think, is the person who is pacifist but is willing to throw down if someone wants to throw hands, right? Like, but like you need someone who's willing to throw hands. Like, I'm never going to be the guy who shoots. Ryan is never going to be the guy to shoot first. I might be occasionally, like I will take an opportunistic kill occasionally, but also now that I know that that's going to put me in a less pacifist lobby, I'm less likely to do that. Like, it's like the fact that we know that it's happening, I actually think is also bad because it kind of like drives player behavior in a weird
Ironically,
way.
I think just that knowledge in my own brain, because I had this thought when you mentioned it. I actually did not know that they had pacifist versus aggressive sort of lobbies or whatever. And I sort of think of myself as an aggressive player. When we play together, I take pot shots at people all the fucking time. But it's kind of from like a who cares point of
Yeah.
view, which is say like, who cares? What's at stake? I'm gonna lose some stuff. All right, whatever. That's fine. When what's at stake is the health of the lobby that I'm going to be in, where I don't think of myself as a particularly good character. We tend to get farmed when we get aggressive with people. We have lost more engagements than we have won. I have killed a number of people, but probably I've died way more. And so under those circumstances, well, now I never want to take a pot shot because I'm explicitly going to punish myself if I were to. And that is bad. That's a really bad incentive for the game.
Yeah. I do think it also, I do think that it still holds true that duos and trios are more aggressive than solos.
That's fair.
Or rather, you are more there. I think there's more variance in the duos and trios lobbies, right? Like, I think the solo lobbies have kind of self-segregated into like hardcore PvPers and pacifist realms. And I have heard that there are like sus lobbies, which is like people, which is kind of like that like have people who are paranoid. Like, the last round I played, I heard shots, I heard a flare go up, and I ran into the room, and the guy was like, "I'll like, sorry, I just couldn't take the chance, right? Like, I'll pull you out, right?" He didn't finish the guy. He just like, just didn't want to take the risk, knocked him down, and like let him leave because you can leave while you're downed, and let him leave, and actually escorted him out. I think that type of player is the type of player like is kind of like this like mid-level player, but you know, how are you gonna like? I have since the expedition I've played. I'm like level 30 something now. I think I've gotten ratted once, exactly once.
Mm-hmm.
I got exit camped, and I was very annoyed. But like you know, it was much more frequent before the expedition. So I wonder if I wonder maybe it's kind of like a Christmas, you know, new blood thing, and maybe it'll sort itself out over the next couple of weeks.
This is something else I was thinking. I was actually thinking of counter arguments. I was like, okay, so I made a pretty good case that the game is going to be dominated by PvP players, but I actually think that there's a pretty good counter argument to this, which is that will the PvP is the PvP fun of rat fucking people motivating in the long term? I don't. Maybe not. Right? Like,
So
is it if
I don't think rat fucking is. I think honest PvP is, right? Like,
okay, sure.
yeah.
Yeah, like when I think about rat fucking, the reason I'm thinking about it in these terms is because I'm thinking about like an exit, like hardcore exit camp. It's maybe we could do this, but it has never come up in our play where we want to exit camp somebody, or even like when we're like fighting somebody on an exit, we want them or anything like that, because generally we kind of have our own sort of loot, and maybe there's like a predator prey dynamic, like okay, maybe I'm going to go in as a predator, I'm going to have really intense PvP stuff, and I'm going to wait for people to walk into the exit, and I'm just going to kill them and take all of their shit. I'm not going to do any of my own sort of like looting, but my bet is that that's actually not all that common, and I don't know, maybe these kinds of people also just sort of wash out because like there's not actually a lot of like skill or expression there, which speaks more to the other side of things. Like, yes, honest PvP, there is that skill expression, right? Where if you're in a PvP sort of lobby with other people and you're doing the kind of like, I'm on a rooftop, he's in a window, we're sniping, and then I try and get a good angle and displace all the rest of that I definitely see how PvP players are going to be attracted by that. But I don't know that I think that there are fundamental sort of like, in Magic the Gathering terms, we would call this like a Dave or something, right? Who just wants to rat fuck people with,
Yeah.
you know, like that's like beating the bot on easy,
Yeah.
and that's the only way you play the game.
Yeah. Like, I just don't. Yeah, I think you're right. I just don't think it's got enough legs, right? Like, to be long term entertaining. But you know, who knows? Anyway,
Who knows?
we've run very long. We should probably wrap this
That's
up.
true. We can wrap it.
Um, well, if you would like to email us about any of the things we talked about on this podcast, you can email us at derpsgames@gmail.com or podcast@derpsgames.com. You can follow us on twitch.tv/derpsgames or youtube.com/derpsgames, where these go out live. Rate and reviews wherever you find podcasts. All links will be down in the description. Buddy, do you have anything else you're looking to promote?
God, I don't think so, because it's the holidays and I don't have anything new coming. So not yet,
All right.
but maybe later.
Well, in that case, I will say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.
Oh, no. Did you transition to this?